everybody, it's Jackson Fulcher here, and you're probably wondering, Jackson, aren't you supposed to be trying to make a YouTube live stream that'll eventually fail because of your internet connection? Well, yeah, I'll try that some other time, but right now it's that time of year again where I catch up on all the movies that I haven't reviewed yet because I'm lazy, don't have enough time. This video, it's all gonna be about the Netflix films that I have seen, because Netflix has been pumping out a lot of films. Some of them I've already done full reviews on, but this is just gonna be one big catch-up for a bunch of other ones. I haven't seen all of them. There's still a couple that I need to see, like Roma, that's not out yet, but there's also Cargo, I know The Week Of, that's like an Adam Sandler, Chris Rock movie, Futile, Stupid Gesture. There's a bunch of other Netflix films that I haven't gotten around to, but these are a big bulk of them already that I was planning on talking about in separate videos, but I'm running out of time here. I'm just gonna put them all into one video. And before I talk about films, I just wanted to briefly discuss the TV shows that I've seen. So basically all the Marvel stuff and then Mike Flanagan's new show. Iron Fist, I could care less about that cancellation. I know it's a big deal about the Marvel Netflix cancellations, and I care a lot about the cancellation of Luke Cage and Daredevil, but Iron Fist, I still don't care about that one. I know a lot of people were talking about how it's an improvement, and I can say an improved because they shortened the episodes. I still found the season to have a lot of the same problems that the last one had. I'm just not interested in the Danny Rand Iron Fist story whatsoever. I guess some fans of the show will be disappointed that the show ends on a cliffhanger, and we're probably never going to see that. See where that goes unless Disney Plus picks it up or if it moves to Hulu or something like that. I don't know if they're going to even have a future or if this is just it. Last time we're ever going to see them, but to be honest, that cliffhanger didn't really interest me all that much anyways. Danny Rand's character I've always liked more when he's interacting with other people, but in this show, since he's the lead, not a big fan of that. Colleen Wing I still think is a better character, and the Meachums still don't like him. So it basically has the same flaws that I had with the first season, just it's a little shorter and a little bit quicker pace, so there's that, I guess. Luke Cage was really good. I still prefer season 1, but I really did like the way they kind of handled this season. Again, they end it on a cliffhanger, and we're never going to see that come to fruition, so little disappointed, I guess, but that has nothing to do with just the season itself. I thought it was really good. Mike Coulter did a very good job. Once again, there's one scene in one of the episodes between him and Rosario Dawson that's like one of the best ever, just as far as like acting goes, where they're yelling at each other, just having this really intense argument. It's quite something, and the villain of it, what's his name? Bushmaster. He was awesome. Like, I loved him. He was fantastic. Alfred Woodard was really good again. Shades, I always liked him in the first season. I was glad to see him here, and also get to know Shades a little bit more, just try to connect with him a little bit, and I really like that. There's a lot that I did like Misty Knight, I think might be even better in this season. If I had to say anything flaw-wise, is that the bullet stuff, that got really old, just everyone shooting at him all the time. Like, okay, can you guys, like, ever learn? Like, can you just, like, use different weapons to try to knock him out? Because the bullets thing is getting real tiresome. There's a couple times where the songs don't really fit the scenes that they're playing in, and I didn't really care for the character of DW. He kind of showed up, and I was like, okay, I don't really care for his character all that much. I'd rather him not be there at all. But, you know, it was a solid season. It was a solid follow-up to the first Luke Cage season. Daredevil, best Marvel show that has come out this year. Loved it. Loved it. I don't really think I have, like, any flaws with it, really. I was quite riveted throughout, and this is a season that wasn't like Iron Fist where they had to shorten it. Like, it stayed 13 episodes and still managed to rivet me. Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin. He's fantastic. Charlie Cox. It bums me out the most that this show gets canceled because his performance as Matt Murdock is just something I love to see constantly, and I wish I could see more of that performance. Even Charlie Cox has said that he's not done with the character, but you know how things turn out now. Also, I really like what they did with Bullseye in this show. I was really waiting for like a cheesy moment for him to go Bullseye or something like that, but no, they never did it once, and I was proud of that they didn't make him that much of a cornball. They actually took his character quite psychologically seriously, and that was great. This season really took a whole new approach that I adored so much, and it just really worked to really elevate this show. It might be my favorite Daredevil season. My favorite season out of any Netflix show used to be Daredevil Season 1, but I love Season 3 more than any other Daredevil season, so this is my favorite Marvel Netflix thing thing ever, so it kind of sucks that all this cancellation stuff is happening right after it's kind of hit its peak, pretty much. I'm gonna miss Matt Murdock, I'm gonna miss Foggy Nelson, I'm definitely gonna miss Karen Page. Deborah Ann Woll did a fantastic job playing her, and her character, like, they really delve into some stuff about her that was just fantastic. The flashback episode was quite superb in my eyes. Overall, I'm really bummed that Luke Cage and Daredevil are getting canceled. Iron Fist, not so much, but I really do think that Marvel Netflix could have just continued to evolve into just more greatness, and unfortunately, they're all kind of meeting their ends at the worst possible time. But now there's another show I wanted to talk about real briefly, that is The Haunting of Hill House. Fan-frickin-tastic. It is my favorite Mike Flanagan thing ever. Like, ever. This show is so fantastic. It really does peak like episode 5 and episode 6. I believe it's episode 6 where they do like a bunch of just like long tracking shots that just, oh my god, there's so much stuff that they do with that, because this is a haunted show, but it also focuses more on the family drama. So there's moments where you'll be following this family and they're talking with each other, but then you'll notice in the background there's a ghost back there, but they won't make a big deal out of it. There's no bong or anything, it just kind of shows up, and then they just start following the other characters again. Like, it's so well done. And that's something that Mike Flanagan has always understood, is that the drama is sometimes more important than the horror. You get more invested in the horror once you're invested with the people, and they spend a lot of time with this family, the Cranes, and it's quite great. The acting on all of them is quite fantastic, especially the guy who plays Luke. He was freaking awesome in this show. And even Henry Thomas, him and Mike Flanagan continue to work together, and they're really pumping out some great stuff. Like, he was great as their dad, and then also Timothy Hutton, the transition was really good between them. Carla Gugino had a great role in this. Kate Siegel coming back from Hush, she was really good. The mom from Ouija coming here, like, she was really good. There's so much great acting, so much great scares, and I tried picking out like all the ghosts in the background that Mike Flanagan and a bunch of people have been talking up, and I was so surprised to find out that after I was done watching the show, there were still so many other ghosts that I didn't find. So it's a really great rewatch in that sense, just trying to go back and look in the background for everything. It's such a fantastic show. It's like my favorite show to come out this entire year. I don't watch a lot of TVs though, so take that with a grain of salt, but I love the show. Please check it out. It's on Netflix for free. Alright, now let's talk about these Netflix movies. When we first met, I kind of mentioned this briefly in my Goosebumps 2 review. I thought it was a decent rom-com. Adam Devine, he can be a little grating at times, as kind of per usual, but I thought he was really good in this movie. There are still some jokes missed, but overall I thought the comedy worked really well when he's just constantly trying to go back and fix things so he can end up with Alexandra Daddario. Like, that was really cool. And I also really liked his interaction with Shelley Hennig and seeing where that character went. Like, it was just a really great chemistry between Adam Devine and her. And Shelley Hennig, I didn't really care for in Unfriended, but in this one, like, she really brought her A game to it, and I really liked her in this one. I'd like to see her in more stuff, to be honest. That's how much I really liked her in this movie. King Botch from Vine is in this, and he's okay. Like, he and Adam Devine are friends, and he can sometimes be grating like Adam Devine, but for the most part, he's alright. Overall, it's just a really solid rom-com that kind of has some similar rom-com cliches that we've seen before, and some jokes don't really hit, and the acting probably could have been a little better from a couple people, but overall, I really enjoyed it. I liked where it did end up going. I was a little afraid that it would go in the more generic, predictable route, but it actually did some things that switched it up. First match I saw earlier this year, it was really surprising because I didn't watch anything like trailer-wise about it. I was just on Rabbit and I watched it with my friends. At first I thought it was going down like the discrimination route of like this girl is trying to prove herself in this team. So it just felt a little dated as far as her going into the boys team. Like, you know, there's like girls wrestling, like she doesn't have to go to boys team. It just felt a little, number one, just kind of dated, and number two, if there was something preventing her from joining the girls team, maybe they should have made that more clear. The movie kind of drags at a couple parts, and there's some lines of dialogue that me and my friends kind of thought were a little laughable, but what really surprised me is that this isn't a sports movie at the end of the day. It's about her and her father, and the interesting relationship that they had, and how her father gets back into her life and tries to change things knowing how good she is at wrestling. Like, it's quite an interesting story, and I really found myself digging it. It's such a great movie with some great acting. I wish that there are certain things near the beginning that could have been touched up on that would have made me like really love this film, but overall it's a really strong B+. Like, if you haven't seen it yet, please do. It's such an interesting movie. Set it up! First 10 minutes or so, I was like, oh boy, here we go. Because I did see the trailer for this one, and I was like, I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel about this. It's another rom-com, and I'm sure it'll have the rom-com cliches that a lot of rom-coms rom-coms have, and it does, but after the first 10 minutes of the movie, and they started to actually, Zoe Deutch and Glenn Powell actually started to talk with each other and interact and plan hooking up their cruel bosses, I really got into it. Me and a couple friends were watching on a Rabbit, and they kind of shared the same sentiment as me, like, oh, not really sure how this is going to turn out, but as the movie progressed, we all got into it, and we started to, like, actually quote some of the dialogue, because it was actually quite good, and there was a lot of great scenes between Zoe Deutch and Glenn Powell. Like, it turned out to be quite surprising, like, one of the most enjoyable films that I've actually seen this year. There's still, like, a few jokes that didn't really work for it, but overall, like, I really walked out of this film really enjoying it. And they also did one storyline between the two bosses. I thought they were going to do something predictable with it, but they actually did something a little different. I was like, okay, that works. That works to spice this up a bit. So I'd give it a strong B. It's a very strong B movie. That it's just a lot of fun, and it knows exactly what it is, and it's just fully embracing how fun it is. And I really adore Zoe Deutch and Glenn Powell's chemistry. Those two, there's a scene with them involving them eating pizza. It's one of the sweetest things ever, and also just the last scene between them. The movie just gets you really involved with everything, to the point where you're just like, please, just please make it work, guys. Brain on Fire, I know this is based on a true story, it's based off a book as well, and maybe it should have just stayed as a book, because this movie was just very forgettable, and near the end of it, almost unnecessary. Chloe Grace Moretz's performance, very laughable. At first it was just kind of like, alright, she's just an average girl, whatever, but once she starts to get this problem with her performance gets very laughable, which is unfortunate since this is based on a real thing. She's playing a real person who wrote the book, but her performance just was not working for me at all. The performance by her boyfriend, too, not working for me. Just, I could not care about their romance, couldn't care about their struggles. Carrie-Anne Moss and who was the dad? I don't even remember who the dad was, but those two delivered solid performances. Tyler Perry shows up as the boss, and it's not like Gone Girl level of performance, but he was still kind of solid in this. But near the end of the film, as I said earlier, as good as those performances kind of were, and as interesting a drama like this could have been, the movie kind of ends in a place where it feels like, it barely feels like much has actually happened. I don't really feel impacted all that much. Why did I even watch this? You know, it's one of those movies that you almost don't want to call a movie just because it makes you feel nothing at the end, basically. It's a C- movie. It's not offensively bad or anything, but it's not really all that good either. It's not really all that interesting. I was just watching it kind of bored, to be honest, which is surprising since this movie's only about an hour, 25, 30 minutes, something like that. I wouldn't recommend you watch this. The Legacy of a White-Tailed Deer Hunter was terrible. Not because of Josh Brolin, not his fault, but his character is very unlikable. I don't even know why they made him as unlikable as it was. Like, by the time the characters were supposed to learn some lessons near the end, I just found myself just being really annoyed and not buying into it. I hated him and also Danny McBride in this movie. Once again, he's not giving a bad performance, but it's like, I feel like this character just is not working for me at all. And the story, it's a neat idea. This dad who used to the wild, that goes out to the wilderness, this wilderness survival guy, he's bringing his son in like, it's going to be a great bonding because I'm divorced from my mom and we don't see each other much. But then the son, like, just could care less about everything. Like, that's a neat idea, but they treat it like a comedy film more so than like an actual, like, interesting psychological drama. It doesn't really feel as well balanced. It was very irritating, to be honest. None of the humor was really working for me, to the point where I just got really annoyed with everything about this movie. It has some nice wilderness shots, but that's to be expected because they're in the wilderness, so it's a D+. I really did not enjoy this film, and by the end of it I just felt pretty bad, as opposed to what the film was trying to make you feel, which was kind of an uplifting thing. Duck, Duck, Goose. I remember seeing the trailer for this, and it was supposed to come to theaters, but then it went straight to Netflix, so not a good sign, but it's not terrible. Like, I watched the trailer thinking like, oh man, this is gonna be awful, but it's just, you know, it's just kind of mediocre. Animation is much better than I thought it would be, but even then, there's some moments where it doesn't quite work. There's a couple fun chase scenes. The little ducklings, one of them played by Zendaya, like, they were kind of cute, and the cat villain was a lot of fun. A lot of fun with the cat villain, but the main guy, I don't even remember his name, but I know it's Jim Gaffigan, who's a comedian that I love. I think he's very talented, very funny, but his voice just doesn't really fit this character, and the character itself I just didn't really find any connection to, and I didn't really care much for him anyways. And as much as I kind of like the ducklings, I just could not bring myself to care about this goose character, and I didn't really buy into their bond all that much. It's very cliche and kind of predictable, and it's not really all that funny for the most part. Like, I don't really recall myself ever laughing unless it was involving that cat. It's a lot of childish stuff, but nothing that's too offensive either, so I can't really say I hate this film. It's just one that's similar to Brain on Fire, just very mediocre. It did make me feel something a little bit more than Brain on Fire, but it's just another one of those movies that's out, and maybe you'll see it once, but you'll forget about it like 2 days later. It's a C-. Father of the Year was excruciatingly bad. Oh my god, David Spade, awful in this film, but what surprised me is that he's not even really the main character, and he takes a back seat to Joey Bragg from the show Liv and Maddie, and Joey Bragg is terrible in this film, acting-wise and also character-wise. He sucks. I don't know why they thought I'd want to follow him, but he's just terrible. Nat Faxon, I really liked him in the show Disenchantment. Oh, maybe I should talk about that. This Disenchantment was a really good show. I don't know why I got hated on so much. Alright, done talking about that. I really liked him in that show, but in this movie, he's just really annoying. He plays that same, like, prissy kind of father who needs to man up, but I didn't care for him all that much. I didn't really find him all that funny. He was kind of annoying. Bridget Mendler from Good Luck Charlie, my favorite thing about this movie, because whenever she comes in, she brings, like, a spark of life. Like something to care about comes in, and it's her character. And every time she shows up, for as brief as moments as they are, like, it's still something that I was like, oh, I'm feeling something. There's something here. Like, there's some kind of warmth there that's making me interested in the movie more. But then as soon as she leaves, we focus more on Joey Bragg and his friend and college stuff and virtual VR stuff that David Spade gets into. Like, oh, what's this VR? Oh my god, what's going on? Like, my god, man. I hated this movie. It really annoyed me. D- for Father of the Year, but what was I really expecting with a David Spade movie that goes straight to Netflix anyways? Extinction, I knew nothing really about. Like, I don't remember seeing the trailer for this, but maybe I did beforehand, and I walked out thinking it was a decent movie. First 15 minutes, very generic, very draggy to me, like, oh god, is this what I have to sit through for the next hour and a half? But then as soon as the aliens kind of come in, and once you kind of later find out who the aliens actually are, and all this, and who the people are, and all this stuff, like, I was really getting into it. Like, okay, this is a neat idea, I like this. I don't really like the fact that it ended in a very sequel bait kind of way, like a YA novel, basically, is the way it ends, so a little, I didn't really care for that so much, and there's also some visual effects that could have been touched up on, but the action sequences were fairly riveting. Michael Pena's really good in this, Lizzie Kaplan is also really good, Mike Coulter shows up, Luke Cage shows up at one point, and he's pretty good. It has an interesting enough story, but some of it is just told a little bit too kind of dull for me, so it's not like a really strong movie, but it's a decent one at that. I was fairly interested throughout, so I'd give it a B-. Like, if you haven't seen it yet, there's no big rush to, but it's alright. Like, it's a surprisingly better movie than I expected, for Netflix, at least. Like Father is just another split down the middle, kind of mediocre movie with a neat idea that could have been really great, but the directing and writing wasn't really that much up to par. There's some moments where some jokes work, and some moments where the emotion kind of works, more so with Kelsey Grammer's performance. He was very good here, and Kristen Bell and him kind of have a nice interaction, but just overall, structurally, it's not perfect. The movie kind of opens up with them kind of being at odds, but then they spend a night drinking, so it's like, oh, we're buddies now, but then they get on the ship, and those odds kind of come back. But then it feels like they resolve it at, like, this waterfall, but then there's something else that kind of splits them, but then they're kind of back, but then there's something else, and then they wrapped up the movie. It's like, it's not perfect structure-wise, and there's a lot of characters that I couldn't care for. Like, Seth Rogen I thought was really wasted in this movie. I thought he could have actually been a really strong supporter, but he's not in it all that much. There's a gay couple that shows up that I found really annoying, mainly because they're just playing up a bunch of stereotypes, and I was like, alright, I don't see why that fits well in this film, like, at all. A film that's trying to be a little bit more realistic as far as human emotion and human relationships. But okay, I guess. So this movie's like a C. Kristen Bell was good performance-wise. Character just, isn't all that compelling. Kelsey Grammer is like the best part of this film, but even then I think they could have built up that relationship better. They could have structured this film better. It's just it's a C, whatever. I forgot most about this movie, to be honest. The Package is probably the worst Netflix film that I've seen all year. In fact, it definitely is. I hated this movie so much. What surprised me the most about this movie is that there are people out there actually saying it's really good. I don't see it at all. This movie's nothing but one big dick joke. The entire movie is nothing but the plot is a dick joke. Someone chops off their penis by accident, and they go to the hospital, but oops, we sent the wrong cooler with the penis in it. We have the one with the penis. We gotta go to the hospital. It's like, oh my god. Like, I hated it just from, like, the beginning of the movie. The guy who actually gets his penis cut off later on, he's encouraging his best friend to sleep with his sister. So it's really weird when the Alex Strangelove guy actually does get the girl and they're making out, and the girl's brother's like looking like, oh yeah, get him. That's like, what are you doing? Why are you encouraging this so much? It is so awkward. And what's worse is him in the hospital. He's cringing it up big time, and the nurse is actually going along with it. It's like, can you guys just act like normal human beings and come up with clever comedy instead of just acting so cringy all the time? The Alex Strangelove kid, I didn't even like in this movie. I hear he's really good in Alex Strangelove. Haven't seen it, but he's so bad here. He's like overacting in a cringy way the entire time. And it's like, oh my god, chill out for like 1 second. There's a scene where they make him suck the venom out of the pen 15 that he has in the cooler because a snake bit it. So it's like, oh, I gotta suck the venom out, so why don't you guys wait out there? And the friends are like, okay, we're so sorry that you have to do this. They step out and they're like, hey, look, what was it, a helicopter or something like that? Hey, we're gonna come back in. Oh my god, we see you. The thing now. It's like, I can't believe that's a scene they actually did. It's just, there's so many things wrong with that. I could spend like 2 hours just breaking down everything that's terrible about this movie. On my Letterboxd, if you didn't know, I have a Letterboxd, you can follow me there. My review for it is like one cringy quote that like this boyfriend said. It's like, oh my god, I'm so mad, I just broke my vape. You owe me a new vape, Becky. It's like, what is this dialogue, man? And then the movie just gets peak awful when they go to a hospital and like, all right, we got the penis for you. And there's a guy with the cut off penis in the other room. All right, we're good. But then they later find out, oh wait, that's not our friend. We're at the wrong hospital. And you find out that the guy whose penis now has their friend's penis. This is really weird to explain. His girlfriend cut it off, and then the girlfriend comes back to the hospital like, oh, I love you. But then they leave the room for a bit, come back. Oh, there's so much blood everywhere because I did it again. It's like, oh God, stop, please stop. I'm sorry I didn't do a full rant on this because I really feel like I should have, because this is a big fat F. It's so awful. I hated it. I hated every second of it because there's really nothing that clever about it. Everything feels forced and contrived. I couldn't care about any of the characters or their emotions or anything. It's terrible. The girlfriend to Alex Strangelove in this movie was in Blockers, which is a much better comedy film with some raunchy stuff in there. Much better. They approach Blockers in a much more clever way. This one is just nothing but just terrible, 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 terrible stuff that I wish I didn't see in a movie, but here it is. Why did you do this, Netflix? Why? To All the Boys I've Loved Before is a Awesomeness TV movie distributed by Netflix. I didn't have that much hope for it, but it actually turned out pretty decent. Like, there's some decent performances in there. The Noah kid, who's in another Netflix rom-com I'll talk about later, he was really good. The guy from Happy Death Day shows up, and he was really good. I really liked the main character and the family stuff that they did. It still has its rom-com cliches, though, and I do think that the premise that they have, where she writes out all these letters to boys that she's never mailed, but then they get mailed, when you just have two boys, it doesn't really feel like you're fully exploring what this premise could have offered. But then again, they have a sequel coming out, apparently, so whatever, they'll save that for later, I guess. There's still some other jokes that don't work. There's an evil high school bully that, of course, every high school movie has the evil high school bully thing. Whatever, I don't care. And there's also, instead of showing like text box come up when they're actually texting, they just have words come up, like in like a weird font. Like, why don't you just do the House of Cards text box thing? But whatever, this is a solid B-. I found myself actually kind of liking it near the end. Not as good of a rom-com as when we first met or like set it up or something, but this was pretty good. Sierra Burgess is a Loser is the other Noah Centineo film that I was talking about. This is not as good as To All the Boys I've Loved Before. Sierra Burgess is not a good character, and Shannon Purser, I liked her in Stranger Things for the one episode that she's in. But in this movie, solid performance, I guess, but the character just goes down such a despicable, stupid route that I just couldn't find myself to care. I kind of told this to my friends on Rabbit, is that there's this evil high school bully at first who's the one who actually sends Noah the fake number of Shannon Purser, so when he starts texting Sierra Burgess is like, oh, he thinks this is bully, so I need to pretend to be her, basically. And that's how it starts, but then later on, she actually works with the bully to kind of prank this dude, and I was actually thinking, hey guys, on Rabbit, wouldn't this movie be much better if the high school bully and Sierra Burgess actually get together and fall in love? Wouldn't that make for a much more subverting of expectations kind of movie? Wouldn't that make for a much better movie? And I don't think anyone liked my idea, but I did, because seeing how this movie kind of went, I was like, this is not good at all. Like, basically, Sierra Burgess ends up with the dude, even though she's been lying to him this entire time, manipulating him, tricking everyone. Like, this is what she gets in the end. Just feel bad for me, because reasons, like, oh, okay, sure, whatever. And also, the dude, Jamie, Noah, he was bland. I didn't like him in this movie. I liked him much more in To All the Boys I've Loved Before. This is a solid C. It's alright, but it could have been much better. It's not as good as the other rom-coms Netflix has been doing, and I didn't really like Sierra Burgess as a character. The title is accurate. Sierra Burgess is a loser, but not in a likable, interesting way, in a more, why am I watching this character way. Next Gen is another animated film by Netflix that disappointed me. John Krasinski and the little girl, the voice acting was really good on them, and the visual effects really worked, and the action sequences are quite exhilarating, to be honest. I don't think they spent nearly as much time story-wise with these two characters getting to know each other. It felt very rushed. Jason Sudeikis as the villain, I didn't really care for him at all. They take an interesting direction with his character, but I think they really should have made it a little bit more compelling. It didn't really feel that compelling at the end. Michael Pena as the dog, I don't know what they were thinking. It doesn't add anything to the movie. It's just awful. The world itself looks neat, but I didn't really feel myself getting really invested in it. Like Big Hero 6, for example, which this movie borrows heavily off of. That's a world that it's very advanced, but you could see yourself kind of being in. In this one, there's just so much like talking everything, talking milk cartons, talking fences, talking objects everywhere. And it's like, I don't want to be in this world. This world kind of sucks. There's so many annoying things talking everywhere. So there's a part of me that really wants to like the friendship between the robot and the girl, but there's also that rushed storyline that I just didn't really care for all that much. It's a big ripoff of a bunch of other stuff, Big Hero 6 being the big one. It's another C-. It's better than Duck Duck Goose for sure, because the animation and the action sequences are actually quite outstanding in this one, but it doesn't really hit that emotional punch for me that I think it really should have, and if they spent more time with it, they really could have. Hold the Dark, I actually had to sit on for a very long time before I found out what I actually thought of the film. There's a couple moments where the lines of dialogue are too stilted, and the movie is very dry for the most part, but there's just a couple moments where the stilted lines are a bit too much. The repetition of Alexander Skarsgård's scenes, that kind of felt a little weird. Just, why don't you guys just switch it up a bit? I understand the importance of why he's doing that, but it just feels like it was just scene after scene after scene of Alexander Skarsgård doing the same thing, talking to someone, learning some stuff, and then killing him. And there's also some moments where the movie just feels a little unnecessarily too slow. That being said, after I've reflected on the movie a bit more and looked some stuff up about what the movie is actually about and thinking about other things that have happened in it, this is a very interesting movie. It's quite riveting, to be honest. It will definitely leave you thinking, WTF, at the end, like, what the fuck? But once you actually sit on it, let you kind of reflect on it a bit, read some stuff about it if you have to, rewatch it if you want to. I think you might really end up digging it like I did. I don't want to say too much else about it, but you should really check this film out. I think you guys definitely need to see it. There's one scene in particular, like the shootout at the barn, which is quite grisly, quite intense, but it's a standout sequence for sure. 22 July is the new Paul Greengrass movie, and it's boring. This is the guy who made United 93, Captain Phillips, and Bourne Supremacy Ultimatum, and Jason Bourne. And I did not expect him to make this movie because it's so boring and so uninteresting. The attack scene is like one of the only intense things about the movie. It's the only intense thing about it, but it's actually quite good. But as soon as that ends, you focus more on this character who was there on the island during the attack. he's not that interesting, mainly because the movie just kind of opens with the lead up to the attack, and you don't really spend that much time with all these people. And I get they're trying to go for a little bit more realistic approach. They don't want to make anything too fictionalized, but at the same time, what you're left with in this film is something that feels so empty, like, character-wise. And the only character that I really cared about was Anders, the killer, the attacker. Like, I wanted the movie to mainly just focus on him. I think that movie would have been much more interesting than just focusing on this one guy who was there on the island, but you don't really get to see him bond with everyone else except for, like, a few, like, seconds worth of shots that they show, where it's like, oh, look, everyone's having fun, alright, cut to something else. Like, that doesn't create an interesting backstory for this character. And there's some certain emotional stuff that happens near the end where you really should feel for that character. But you really don't at the end. At least I didn't, because I didn't care about this guy at all, and I wish they spent more time with him if they were going to focus so much on him. And I expected much more out of Paul Greengrass, but this isn't the right film for him. It didn't have that same Greengrass flair that United 93 or Captain Phillips did. Apostle is a new movie by the Raid guy. I was expecting a little bit more, I guess, like, intense violence to it, just judging by the trailer, but that being said, this movie's still pretty riveting, even if more violent stuff happens more so near the end of the film. I really did like this movie at the end of the day. A lot of people aren't going to, but that's fine. This movie, I think, is very well filmed, though. It's very well acted. Dan Stevens, I thought, did a really good job leading this film. I thought also Michael Sheen had a really good part in this. I do think that there's a romantic subplot between two other characters on this island, and it kind of builds into something much bigger and impacts the plot immensely as far as, like, other characters. And I wish I cared about that a little bit more, because at first I was just kind of thinking, oh, I can't wait for Dan Stevens to find his sister and bring her home and defeat this evil cult. But then they also focus on this romantic subplot, and once it finally gets to that scene where everything starts to change, I didn't really feel that much for it, and I wish they spent a little bit more time on it so that I could care. But at the end of the day, like, Gareth Evans really knows how to direct a really grisly, dirty kind of movie, and it's really intense. It gets really intense near the end and pretty violent, but I think if you think you're up for it, then definitely give it a watch. If you think, not for me, then okay, then don't watch it. But it's really good. At least I thought it was really good. B+. The Kindergarten Teacher I liked, but I was also disappointed in. Maggie Gyllenhaal was excellent in this movie, and the young boy, he was also really good for, like, an actor that young. He was really good. I guess I was really expecting this film to go into more dark places that they didn't really go into. By the end of it, it just kind of feels like, oh, that's it. Alright, you know, because you're watching this film, watching Maggie Gyllenhaal, and she's great, but you're kind of watching it being like, oh, so this character, she's gonna do like this, or something like that. But they never really get to that point, and once they kind of start to maybe get to that point, the film ends. So it's not really all that satisfying at the end of the day. This is definitely a film that I recommend just based off of Maggie Gyllenhaal's excellent performance and the young boy being so good. I do think that they should have spent a little bit more time on Maggie Gyllenhaal's teacher assistant and building some bond between her and the young boy because of a plot detail that is revealed in the film. I do think they should have spent a little bit more time with Maggie Gyllenhaal's actual family to kind of further emphasize why she's so unhappy in life, but overall, it's a decent movie. I'd give it a B-. I just, if I was writing this movie, if I was making it, I'd definitely try to push the boundaries of, like, how far the story could go, I guess. Also, Hector from Coco shows up, and he was really good. Nice to see him in a movie. Outlaw King. I'm just gonna be honest, I fell asleep. So, it's so boring. I was not expecting that at all, because the director made Hell or High Water, which I really liked, but I didn't really like this movie. Like, Chris Pine was really good, I guess, and the action sequences are really dark and grisly. But I didn't care. Like, the movie just feels so soulless and dry, which surprised me because this movie's a little bit of a continuation to Braveheart, a film that I love, but this one just, like, it's like the C-list Braveheart, basically. It's a C, man. I did not like this. It was so boring. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, new Coen Brothers movie that I really liked. Because it's an anthology piece, because it was originally going to be a TV series, but now it's a movie, there are some shorts that work better than others. The first one, the Buster Scruggs one, is the best, like, by far. But then once they transition from that one to the James Franco one, there's, like, this step down is like, oh, well, this one's, like, completely different in tone, and it's also shorter and a little bit lackluster. So that was definitely, like, my least favorite one, was the James Franco one. But then it transitions to the Liam Neeson one, which was dark, psychologically disturbed, but I loved it. And then they did one with Tom Waits, which was really good at the end of the day. And then they did one, The Gal Got Rattled, which was like, that was excellent, but then they also did The Moral Remains, which is like basically just all dialogue driven, which I really loved. It kind of cuts itself short a little bit too much at that end one though, and I guess that's a main problem that I have with the rest of the other sketches, is that they kind of don't know how much time to spend with them. I think the Buster Scruggs one, they spent as much time as they needed to, but everything else kind of feels maybe a little bit too short, or maybe just a wee bit too long, basically. But overall, I did find myself really enjoying this film. I definitely want to watch it again, because Coen Brothers movies are very rewatchable. I'd give it a very strong B+. Cam, I loved this movie. Honestly, I really adored this film. There's only one scene that I didn't like involving these police officers. Other than that, I found myself very riveted by this film. The main character, she was phenomenal. Like, I really enjoyed her in this film, seeing how she kind of looks at this cam girl lifestyle that she has, how she kind of hides it from her family, but who she also shows it to, and also how the people that watch her could show up in her real life and how they act towards her. Like, it's a very interesting movie that also has just this psychological darkness to it, you know? I really enjoyed this film a lot. It's not really a horror film, it's just more of a psychological kind of thriller movie that I ended up really liking. The cinematography is really good. It's a well-shot, well-edited movie, and the main performance is really good. I'd highly recommend this film. This was supposed to be a theatrical Blumhouse movie, but now it's a Blumhouse Netflix one, and that's okay with me, because it's one of my favorite Netflix and Blumhouse movies. So, strong A for Cam. Definitely check this film out. Go in knowing as little as possible. It's just a great little scary twist on the internet, similar to what Blumhouse did with Unfriended, except I think Cam is better than Unfriended Dark Web. And the last movie I'm going to talk about here is Mowgli Legend of the Jungle. I was thinking about making a full video for this, but at the end of the day, it's unfortunately another just kind of forgettable, mediocre Netflix movie. That's something that I think I've repeated a lot during this video, is that Netflix makes a lot of mediocre movies, and for every gold nugget in there, there's just always something that's either just, that was okay, to, that's really awful, like The Package, completely awful, right? But then every once in a while you'll get something like Cam, but then you'll get something like Duck Duck Goose or Brain on Fire, and there's just an overabundance of mediocre stuff. Hopefully with Roma and Cam, like I mentioned earlier, they'll start to kind of change their ways as far as focusing more on the quality of their content as opposed to just putting out content. But Mowgli Legend of the Jungle, I think, was definitely not something that they really needed. It's a very mediocre movie, and from Andy Serkis, I was honestly expecting much more, especially out of the visual effects. There's so many moments where you can tell, alright, that's a green screen. That animal, not there. In fact, the elements that you've added to their face doesn't really work, makes them look a little fake. And there's only a couple moments where I thought, now that's a great special effect. That is fantastic. That looks beautiful. And then there's also, oh, well, that doesn't look too good. You know, it's just a mixed bag as far as how the visual effects looked. The young boy who plays Mowgli, who was also in Bad Words, which I loved, he's really good as Mowgli, and all the voice actors are great. Christian Bale works perfectly as Bagheera, and Andy Serkis, this is a more book-accurate Baloo, like as far as like this drill sergeant as he's described it, like he works really well as Baloo. Benedict Cumberbatch is excellent as Shere Khan, he's as great as you'd want him to be, basically. And for a long time in the beginning of this film, besides the kind of bad special effects, I was actually kind of getting a little interested in it, but there's this annoying hyena that followed Shere Khan around that I didn't really care for, and there's one scene where he actually talks to Mowgli, but I thought he was working with Shere Khan, so why wouldn't the hyena try to attack him? A little unclear. Also, the laws of the jungle. In the 2016 one, you kind of got the sense of what the laws were, but in this one it was a little unclear because they make a big deal about how Mowgli broke it, but it's like, but why do you care so much? What kind of law is it exactly? What is going on here? You know, it's very unclear in that sense, and when Mowgli goes to the man village for a bit, they needed to spend more time there, because they kind of rush through it, and you think, oh, you're watching a changed Mowgli, but you don't feel like he's changed at all. There's this hunter character that becomes a big deal for really no reason all that much, and I wish they spent more time with that. And there's also this moment where he's at the man village and you hear Shere Khan is causing chaos in the jungle, but you wish you could see that. You wish you could see all this stuff happening. There's a lot of things that I enjoy. There's a lot of intense action sequences there with Shere Khan. He's really vicious, and there's just a lot of great moments here, but then there's also stuff that holds it back. So like I said, this movie's just nothing but a huge mixed bag. And it's really disappointing, because I expected a lot more out of an Andy Serkis directed movie. You'd think because of Planet of the Apes and Smeagol and King Kong that the special effects would be like top tier and like possibly rivaling the Disney version. But the Disney version that came out 2 years ago still visually looks much better and holds up much better. So Sorry, Circus. And that's it. That's all the Netflix movies that I'll be talking about in this video. I'll probably talk about Roma whenever that comes out at some point. I'll definitely make another catch-up video, like sometime in January, basically. Maybe I'll talk about another Netflix movie there, but this is the bulk of the Netflix movies that I have seen. So, what's your favorite Netflix film to come out this year? Leave in the comments below what you think. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.